Every watch collector eventually learns the same lesson, and it usually costs them money before it clicks. The chronograph is not a stopwatch. It is the single complication that separates a casual watch from a serious one. You can spend $50 on a chronograph, or you can spend over $1 million. On the surface, they do the exact same thing. But what is happening underneath the dial is a completely different universe. And today we are climbing all 7 levels, from the bottom to the absolute ceiling, so you know exactly where your money goes and where it stops making sense. This is the 7 levels of chronograph watches. Before we start climbing, you need to understand one thing. We are not ranking these by price alone. We are ranking them by build quality and movement sophistication. Because a $3,000 chronograph with the wrong movement inside can be a worse buy than a $500 one with the right architecture. Price follows engineering, not the other way around. Level 1. The Casio quartz chronograph and the Seiko quartz chronograph. This is the chronograph with no romance. You press the pusher, a hand starts moving, you press it again, the hand stops. A tiny quartz module inside handles everything with digital precision. The Casio F91W costs less than a decent lunch, and it will time your intervals down to the 100th of a second without complaint. Seiko's quartz chronograph lineup does the same with slightly more visual ambition, putting analog hands on a dial that still runs on a battery. There is nothing wrong with these watches. They are accurate, they are reliable, they will outlast mechanical chronographs costing 50 times more without a single service. But there is no craft in the chronograph function itself. The module is stamped, assembled by machine, and identical across millions of units. You are buying a function, nothing more. And for a lot of people, that is perfectly fine. A Casio on the wrist of a runner who actually uses the chronograph every morning has more purpose than a Daytona sitting in a safe. Function without romance is still function. Therefore, the gap between level 1 and level 2 is not about accuracy. It is about intention. Level 2, the Seiko Speedtimer Solar and the Dan Henry 1963. This is where the chronograph starts to feel like something you chose on purpose rather than something you grabbed off a shelf. The Seiko Speedtimer Solar pairs a solar-powered quartz movement with a vintage racing chronograph design that looks like it belongs on a 1960s pit lane. The dial layout, the tachymeter bezel, the whole package carries a visual weight that the Casio simply does not attempt. The Dan Henry 1963 runs on a Mecha quartz hybrid, which uses a quartz timekeeping base but drives the chronograph seconds hand with a mechanical module. That means you get the satisfying sweep and snap of a mechanical reset with the accuracy of quartz. Neither of these is a true mechanical chronograph, but both of them prove that you do not need to spend thousands to own a chronograph with genuine design intention, solid build quality, and a wrist presence that punches above its price. They are proof that the entry point to the chronograph world does not have to feel like a compromise. They are the gateway drug, and they are dangerously good at their job. But a gateway is still a gateway. The real mechanical chronograph experience starts at level 3. Level 3, the Hamilton Intra-Matic Auto Chrono and the Tissot PRS 516. Welcome to the Swiss workhorse tier. Both of these watches run on movements from the Valjoux and ETA family, specifically calibers like the Valjoux 7750 and its derivatives. These are the movements that power the majority of Swiss automatic chronographs under $4,000. They have been manufactured for decades, refined through countless iterations, and serviced by virtually every watchmaker on Earth. If your local independent watchmaker cannot service a 7750, they probably should not be called a watchmaker. The Hamilton Intra-Matic puts this proven engine inside a clean, vintage-inspired case that would look at home in a 1968 racing Patek. The Tissot PRS 516 takes a sportier approach with a motorsport aesthetic and solid bracelet. Both give you a true automatic chronograph with a mechanical cam lever switching system and lateral clutch. And both deliver the experience of feeling a mechanical rotor spin on your wrist while a chronograph seconds hand sweeps across the dial. That feeling alone is worth the jump from level 2. Now, cam lever and lateral clutch are not dirty words. They work. They have worked for decades. But they are the economy class of chronograph architecture. The chronograph seconds hand stutters slightly when you start timing because the lateral clutch engages through friction rather than a smooth vertical connection. It is a small thing. But once you learn what sits above this tier, you cannot unlearn it. And that brings us to the level where the chronograph conversation changes completely. Level 4. The Tudor Black Bay Chrono. This is the value champion. Full stop. The Black Bay Chrono runs on Tudor's manufacture caliber MT5813, which was developed in collaboration with Breitling and based on their acclaimed B01 architecture. This movement has a column wheel and a vertical clutch, which are the two features that define a premium chronograph. The column wheel replaces the simpler cam lever system with a tiny rotating column that precisely controls the start, stop, and reset functions. The vertical clutch connects the chronograph to the base movement through a stacked disc system rather than a side-mounted friction coupling, which means zero stutter when you hit that top pusher. On top of that, the MT5813 delivers a 70-hour power reserve, COSC chronometer certification, and a silicon balance spring for magnetic resistance. Tudor then puts all of this inside a 41mm steel case with 200 meters of water resistance and charges under $5,000. To put that in perspective, you are getting column wheel and vertical clutch chronograph architecture, the same fundamental technology inside a Rolex Daytona, at roughly 1/8 the price. The finishing is not Rolex, the prestige is not Rolex, but the engineering blueprint is remarkably close. That is why the Tudor Black Bay Chrono sits alone at level 4. Nothing else at this price delivers this spec sheet. However, engineering specs and legacy are two different currencies. And level 5 is where legacy enters the conversation. Level 5. The Omega Speedmaster and the Zenith Primero. These are the icons, the Speedmaster Professional, the Moonwatch, strapped to the wrists of NASA astronauts during the Apollo missions, is probably the most famous chronograph ever made. Its current, caliber 3861, is a manually wound column wheel movement with a coaxial escapement, which reduces friction between components and extends service intervals. Omega did not just build a chronograph. They built the chronograph that went to the moon and came back. The Zenith Primero takes a different path to icon status. Born in 1969 as one of the first automatic chronograph movements ever produced, the Primero beats at 36,000 vibrations per hour. That is 5 Hertz. Where a standard mechanical watch ticks at 4 Hertz, the Primero runs 25% faster, which allows it to measure elapsed time to 1/10 of a second. The central chronograph hand on the current Chronomaster Sport completes a full rotation every 10 seconds. Watching it in person is hypnotic. Both of these watches carry something no amount of money can replicate after the fact. Decades of continuous production, authentic heritage, cultural significance that extends far beyond the watch community. The Tudor from level 4 borrows technology from this tier, but it cannot borrow the history. If you are looking for the sweet spot, where price, engineering, and legacy all converge, level 5 is it. This is where your money works hardest. But some collectors do not want the sweet spot. They want the ceiling. And the ceiling starts at level 6. Level 6. The Rolex Daytona and the Lange and Söhne Datograph. These are the grails. The Daytona runs Rolex's in-house caliber 4130, a movement with a column wheel, vertical clutch, and a 72-hour power reserve packed inside the brand's famously overbuilt oyster case. Every component is manufactured, finished, and assembled by Rolex. The waiting lists are real. The secondary market premiums are real, and the precision is relentless. But if the Daytona represents Swiss industrial perfection, the Datograph represents German artisanal perfection. Produced by Lange and Söhne in Glashütte, the Datograph uses a manually wound column wheel chronograph movement built on a baseplate of untreated German silver. Every surface is finished by hand. The bridges are engraved with meticulous striping. The balance cock carries hand-polished bevels that take a single craftsman hours to complete. And the flyback function allows you to reset and restart the chronograph in a single pusher press without stopping first. The Datograph is not a tool watch. It is a statement about what human hands can achieve when time and cost are removed from the equation. And at roughly $60,000 to $70,000 on the secondary market, it is the most accomplished hand-finished chronograph many collectors will ever see in person. Yet even this is not the top. Because level 7 exists for people who want the chronograph to do things that seem mechanically impossible. Level 7, the Patek Philippe 5172 and the split seconds Rattrapant Grand Complication. This is where the chronograph becomes art. The Patek 5172 houses the CH29-535 PS caliber, a manually wound chronograph movement finished to a standard that makes most other watches look like industrial products. Every angle, every chamfer, every polished screw head is executed under magnification by a single watchmaker who signs the movement when it is complete. The level of individual accountability at this tier does not exist anywhere below it. But the real ceiling of this level is the Rattrapant, or split seconds complication. A Rattrapant chronograph has two chronograph seconds hands stacked on top of each other. You start them together, split one to record a lap time, then release it to catch back up with the other hand, all through mechanical linkages involving hundreds of additional components. Building a Rattrapant requires solving engineering problems that would give most movement designers nightmares. The additional clamp mechanism, the heart piece cams, the column wheels working in sequence. A split seconds chronograph from Patek Philippe or Lange can contain over 500 individual parts, and the tolerance for error across every single one of them is measured in microns. One misaligned component and the entire complication fails. At this level, the price crosses well into six figures and can exceed $1 million. You are not paying for a stopwatch function. You are paying for mechanical art that happens to tell time. So where does that leave you? After climbing all 7 levels, the answer is surprisingly clear. The value sweet spot sits right in the middle of this ladder, between levels 4 and 5. The Tudor Black Bay Chrono gives you flagship chronograph technology at an accessible price. The Omega Speedmaster and the Zenith Primero give you that same technology wrapped in irreplaceable heritage. Everything below that is a compromise you make knowingly. Everything above it is a luxury you pursue because the craft itself became the point, not the function. The chronograph is not a stopwatch. It is a philosophy built into a wristwatch. And now that you have seen what separates $50 from $1 million, you will never look at those two pushers on the side of a case the same way again. If this changed how you think about chronographs, subscribe. We break down watches like this every week, cutting through the marketing and telling you where the real value sits.